All right, guys, we are back. It is the Spin Zone. I'm Mike Carmelini, that handsome devil on my far left. Your right, maybe, I'm not sure. That's Colin Cronin. And special guest this week, Sam Monson. And the reason he's here, you know why he's here, is because we're talking about the Shouty Shows and what the hell is going on in sports media. Let's get into it. Well, Sam, welcome to the show. I co-host, check the mic, and I gotta say, huge fan. We both are. The thing I didn't know there were two Irishmen that talked about sports, but apparently they are, and I'm lucky enough to have them both on my show. Welcome to the show. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's any thoughts, just overall thoughts on the crazy weekend of football we saw this weekend? Did anything jump out at you? Perhaps like historic finishes by the Denver Broncos. This isn't a Broncos show. Just coincidentally, this is something I brought up. I was curious about what your thoughts were.
Yeah, I mean, obviously a pretty crazy comeback win. I'm kind of numb to all the the NGS like win probability stuff. Like this was the least probable comeback since whatever. But the Ringer Fantasy guys put it well, which was this hadn't happened in something like 1,602 straight scenarios where a team was down this bad going into the fourth quarter. Which, if you think of an old 16 game schedule, that means 100 years worth of play, and this doesn't happen. So that, I think, puts it into some pretty solid context.
Yeah, we don't even have to do hot takes to that take itself. That's what we call a hot stat. It doesn't need any help. You don't have to embellish it or make it about you. You can just say nobody's ever scored 2 rushing touchdowns and 2 passing touchdowns in the fourth quarter ever in history. And that speaks for itself. Colin, what do you say to Mr. Monson?
Well, it's good to be talking to you in a slightly different context on this show, Sam. Decided to leave the previewing and reviewing of every game to experts like yourself and Stephen. Wanted to talk to you about a topic you've been on about for quite some time, and it's dear to our hearts here. And I remember when you were leaving PFF and you talked, I think it was a piece on awful announcing, and you talked about trying to be maybe the antidote to Shouty Shows. Let's start there. What pushed you to say kind of enough is enough?
I mean, we've always been a different type of content. I mean, the world has been heading in that direction for a while. It's not just the Shouty Shows, the sports media landscape. It's just part of the broader zeitgeist. I mean, I weirdly ended up in a kind of area where, like, I did an international journalism master's at one point in my life, so have some kind of education in media generally, and then ended up sort of falling into that by mistake later down the line. But even back then, you're taught how newspapers work, like how story writing works, the classic old cliches of if it bleeds, it leads, all the negativity surrounding media generally. And so the world with social media, like everything has just been catalyzed even further. That's been intensified and, distilled into the purest essence of itself. And now you end up in the way we are now, which is like we're throwing everything out the window except the stuff that agitates, antagonizes. Social media algorithms just trap people into an ever intensifying death spiral, and the loudest stuff is the stuff that gets paid through Twitter or TikTok or whatever. So we're just in this horrible world where negativity and awfulness is incentivized. And the people out there trying to do sort of unbiased, straight down the middle analysis, by definition, they're just harder to find. They're not, promoted. They're not incentivized. They're not pushed by the algorithm. So, it's tough. Like a lot of entities that used to do that kind of thing have folded. A lot of people that used to do that kind of thing are getting fired from jobs, getting let go, diminishing in impact. And PFF was always that was the idea, right? Is there's too much of this stuff. Let's just use data. Let's try and tell the story. And then when we went out on our own, the idea is hopefully we have a large enough audience that we can still do this and not have to do some version of, Shouty Shows and the kind of over the top pantomime stuff.
Yeah, it's hard, Sam, to it's an indication of our society. And obviously it can't be the Shouty Shows made society the way it is. It kind of has to be the other way. So it is reflective, indicative of just generally how, at least online or on social media, how people talk to each other, because the discourse there is awful, or can be. But when you meet these people in person, they act like human beings 99% of the time. So it's unfortunate that it sells, but it does. And I guess my first question really would be to you is, who do we blame? And I don't mean names, but I would like the architect, the who's the original, I know who the worst are. We don't have to name them people, but like in the beginning, there were shouty people, and it sort of started, and they were like, "Oh, I could take that." Stephen A. is like, "Oh, I could just yell about everything," and it worked, and it did. But historically, do you have you know, the before the NFL joined together and became the NFL, like before Shouty Shows really became Shouty Shows? Who were some of the originals that you can point to, or that come to your mind?
I mean, I think Skip Bayless is probably most responsible for this. Skip Bayless is John the Baptist if Stephen A. Smith is Jesus. That's where we are with this stuff.
He paved the way.
He was the prophet that came first. He showed the way. And then Stephen A. Smith realized what could be done and weaponized it, right? And that's basically where we are, and spawned a religion off the back of it. And now everything is a Shouty show. So yeah, I think if Skip Bayless hadn't sort of shown what could be done with this thing, then maybe we would have got there eventually. I think this is the real problem, is that the unfortunate reality to this is it works. The sad thing that the sad thing that people like us don't want to really talk about is that this is human nature, right? Like car crash TV, the classic old cliches of if it bleeds, it leads. Like the problem is that works, right? And it was only sort of convention and some kind of integrity that stopped newspapers going that way years before. If they were just chasing the numbers, that's the direction they would have headed years ago. But this world of, journalistic ethics and all that kind of thing, there was something tying them to something broader. And eventually, with capitalism and we got to make money and the bottom line is all that matters, that just disappeared. And it's like, well, where are the numbers? And the numbers were at this stuff. And that's the same thing with Stephen A. Smith and Skip Bayless. It's all an act, but they realize this is where the money is. This is where the most money is. And that's why Stephen A. Smith is the best paid person at the network. Everything he says is fake outrage and a pantomime, but people want to watch it. I hate that they do, but you have to kind of acknowledge that most people want to see that more than anything else.
Yeah. So you're at a wedding and you're standing around all the parents and the bride and the groom, and someone says something about, wow, that's huge. And your inner self says, that's what she said, because that's where my mind goes, right? So everybody has that inside them. But Twitter and somebody started saying that's what she said, or, whatever. And you're right. Everybody, it is who we are, but we hold that inside. But now it's been freed, and it's okay to talk that way. I mean, that's kind of the way I see it. It's like you're exactly right. Like the train wreck, or how you death scroll. I don't want to watch this, but I want to watch these fights or whatever. I don't know what happens, but you're right. Human nature, we do. And I don't know if it was morals or the bosses, but something kept it out of the mainstream for a long time. But yeah, those days are gone. It's crazy. Yeah.
And Sam, do you from your point of view, then, have we reached peak hot take, or is it still is it growing further? Is this the blob that is going to consume us all?
See, I don't know. Because what it's been heading this way for a while, and what's really changed the dynamic a bit is how everybody's like people don't consume, old school broadcast media as much anymore. Nobody can like reads a newspaper anymore. Everyone gets their information from either social media or, some form of like algorithmic phone based device. And those all work, they're all automated, right? So they take whatever you showed interest in. They're like, all right, well, here's more of that. And so it creates this sort of this death spiral, this doom scroll where you're like, well, the thing you show interest in is the worst version of yourself because the car crash, the rubbernecking, the fight in the schoolyard. It's the thing you're not supposed to do, but you do. And the second you show any interest in it, the algorithm's like, oh, well, here's 10 more things like that. And now you're stuck with it, right? Now you're in this, you can't help yourself but look at a few more of them. And now you're just trapped in this world. Yeah. So all these algorithms just create this thing where it's like, well, this is the content that everyone wants. So let's do more of that. And now you're in this horrific, like self-perpetuating cycle where we're just trapped in a world where this is all like the hottest, most ridiculous, loudest, most obnoxious stuff is the most promoted, most, perpetuated stuff out there. And I don't know whether we climb back from that at some point, whether there becomes a breaking point where everyone goes, you know what, this is too much. This was not what the system was designed for. Like even the algorithm, the people that created that would suggest that that's probably not an intended consequence of what they were trying to do. It's sort of, it's an unintended direction that this thing has headed in the pursuit of trying to serve people what they were looking for. But I don't know if that happens naturally or if we have to go through a period of like, RoboCop, like post-apocalypse before we get there.
Yeah, you're kind of breaking my heart here. But I think as long as it sells, if they yell, they sell. If that stays true, then yeah, that's what we're gonna get. I would hope. I wish that wasn't the case, but I think it is. But I guess the only way to take the question now is like, what damage has it done, not emotionally or psychologically to people, but like, let's narrow it down to just like football, the football world. What effect does this have on the consumer understanding the game like they used to? And, you could tune into a show and, it wasn't a narrative and it wasn't someone pushing a hot take. It was, hey, this is what Elway did, and this is what Marino did, and this is why they do those things. And there were the fun, big hit segments and stuff like that. But do you think it hurts the audience or at least makes them less educated, let's just say, about the game?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think there was a very narrow period of time where the general sports discourse and football discourse, more specifically, was getting smarter, right? Like before, there was just a lack of information on the scene. So there was a lot of dumb information out there that wasn't, bad intention. It was just people didn't know as much as they know now. They weren't as educated. They didn't understand the way the game worked as much as it was all. We all just defaulted to the people that played the game and their feelings, right? And it's like, well, this guy's playing. He probably knows what he's talking about. Let's take what he says as face value because nobody knows any better. And then there was this explosion of, data and information and all those kinds of things. Obviously, PFF was at the forefront of that, but there were other people in there, Football Outsiders and a whole load of them. And then so we had this massive explosion of data and a kind of democratization of people who were able to then go into all that and say, oh, look, this thing that all the players have been saying for years, there's no evidence that that's true whatsoever. And in fact, there's a ton of evidence that the opposite is true. So I think there was this period of time where we were getting smarter and people were learning more how the game worked. People were learning more about all kinds of things. And then very hot on the heels of that was the sort of rise and overtaking of the Shouty Show stuff. And that works obviously in direct opposition to that because, almost the dumber the take, the hotter it is by definition, and the more it's going to take off. And so sensible stuff gets buried, and the majority of people are seeing more and more dumb stuff on a consistent basis. And there's still incredible, the smart stuff I think has never been smarter. Like the development of that area has continued to get better and better. It's just that it's becoming more and more marginalized, and fewer people are seeing it.
Yeah, you're right. And PFF was a huge part of that, and it launched a million YouTube channels of football analysts, because they had numbers and people they trusted, like you guys, and provided context to some of those numbers, and then they were able to just expound on it. And it was really interesting what had happened. So in some ways, we're smarter now, but in some ways, we're dumber now. Colin, don't you agree with that?
And it wasn't just it wasn't just numbers and data. It's the access to tape as well at the same time. Like those two things, I think, allowed just so many people to go and do their own research and their own information, and again, reject like what random talking heads on TV would tell you just because they used to play the game.
Yeah, the all 22 was huge. Colin, I'm hogging your show, man. I'm a huge fan.
I'm interested in digging into something, Sam, because you and Steve had Nick Wright on, and you said earlier about people playing characters, and I would agree with that. But Nick Wright claimed on your show that audiences can sniff out when a person doesn't believe what they're saying. Do you believe that? And do you believe that audiences really think that Nick Wright believes what he says, or Emmanuel Acho believes what he says, or it doesn't matter to an audience that they believe it or not?
I think it's always dangerous sort of painting any one audience as a monolith. I think Nick is interesting because I have very little respect for several of the Shouty Show people, and often for different reasons. There are people that don't believe a damn thing that they say, and I hate that. And then there are people that do believe what they say, and they're just idiots, and I hate that equally. And I go back and forth between which one annoys me more. Nick is interesting because he's really smart, and he's acutely aware of what he's doing. And I think he's good at most of the time sticking fairly close to what he believes and actually trying to argue, facts, but understanding how to create a take out of it and how to create content off it in a way that's engaging and antagonistic. And I have a lot more respect for the way he does things. Like he used to be on a Houston radio station years ago that I ended up going on a few times. It's actually him and Danny Parkins, who's now at FS1, I think. Those were like the two guys that were co-hosts of that show. And suddenly, Nick Wright is one of the sort of faces of the industry now, and Danny Parkins is cooking as well. It's amazing that one little kind of Kansas City station put through this kind of talent. So I've kind of known him for years. And he is smart, and he does like information and data. And I don't think he operates the same way as a guy like Acho or Stephen A. Smith, who frankly would say anything if they thought it would get the kind of numbers, or if they think someone will argue with it. I think Nick does stick pretty close to what he believes, but he also knows okay, this is a hot button issue. And if events unfold in a certain way, if I frame it this way, that's what will get people engaged, and that's what will cook. And I mean, I don't like going about things that way, but I have some respect for that relative to the other ways.
Yeah, it's funny, Sam. I kind of hated that guy until I saw him on your show. And then I was like, why do I like what he's saying? Why do I like him? He's being reasonable. And I guess, Colin, I would say, maybe it's not whether they really mean it, but they just authenticity. People sense. I think people can sense when someone's being authentic, unless they're just the greatest actors in the world. And then you just buy whatever De Niro is selling. You just go, okay, well, yeah, he's the Godfather, or whatever. But Nick Wright was surprisingly fun to listen to on that episode. And I thought literally he just said whatever would get him the most clicks and the most watches, and that has to be part of it, because he just does say too many crazy things. But I felt like when he was talking to you, I felt like he meant what he said to you, and keeping that in mind, you don't want to shut him out. Like, you didn't get that feeling, but if you could shut out a debate that never seems to end, do you have one in mind that you would love to mute and never hear again? I will just say LeBron versus Jordan. I'm going to steal that one, so I'm not going to make it easy for you. But is there anything like that you're just, can we please not ever talk about this again and fight over it on a show?
I guess anything that any debate where we try and throw 100% of the credit at one person, when the reality is always it's a pie, right? It's this, there's 60% of the credit goes to this guy, 30% goes here, 10% goes somewhere else. It's never 100%. So this, like, Brady Belichick is probably one like that.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's not even just those two. Brady, Belichick, Kraft, like the whole environment, right? There's 15 people that probably deserve a serious chunk of credit. And then, even within that, you're going to have 1% of the pie chart that's just labeled other. And there's like another 150 things that go in there. But because of the way their careers have either ended or are ending, it's going to be, it was all Brady. Belichick's a fraud. Like, he deserves none of the credit. We're going to rewrite the whole thing. But no, number one, nobody has any idea how much of the credit belong in each camp. But number two, it's almost certainly not, 100% and 0%. It's the whole point is it took all of them together for it to work the way it worked. And then, the only interesting thing is, well, how much of it do you believe was this guy and this guy? But it's just a futile exercise. And the only like declarative strong takes are the most wrong.
Yeah.
Sam, I on your show you have the us versus the Shouty Show segment, and you and Steve kind of break down Shouty Shows like all 22. And I'm wondering, is that like your philosophy on that? Is that just you pushing back? Are you trying to model something better? And is that modeling something better or just the pushback? Or is that a way out of this? Or, is there a way back? Or is this the new normal now? And is what you're attempting to do there a way that if more people could get on board with that and call it out, rather than just the simple gotchas? Because it feels like when I was talking about Nick Wright earlier and what he was saying, or Acho, right? Social media has become this thing about like this you or gotcha. And I think Emmanuel Acho almost thrives off of that. Like, the more clicks and the more engagements, the better. Whereas when you kind of break down what he's doing and you highlight the ridiculousness, how inauthentic he's being, is that our way out of this?
That's the thing, is that, gotcha or keeping receipts, none of that does anything to these, because it's not designed to be right. It's like the whole purpose is engagement, and actually being wrong is just as engaging, if not more, than being right. And not only that, but flip-flopping from one to the other is even more engaging. So, like, you gain nothing by being like, well, you look, gotcha, you said this last week. Like, that's just good for them. The act of you doing that is publicizing their thing, which is only perpetuating the cycle. So that, I think, is a waste of everybody's time. We initially started doing that and we were like, let's just find the most ridiculous takes we can find and like actually give some kind of sensible, analysis of whatever topic it is they're talking about. It's become a little bit more where we're just, talking about the concept a little bit more and joking around with it a bit and being like, well, this is just sad work from Skip Bayless. Clearly he's tapped out, or, this take is a little bit weak. You can see how he's really working to get this one. But yeah, like, philosophically, I mean, I don't think there's any combating the Shouty Shows. There's certainly no purpose in us, talking about Stephen A. Smith as if, like, I don't know what percentage of his audience we have, but it's a minuscule fraction. So, there's no point in trying to push back or engage on those terms. All we can do is sort of stick with what we do and use them as contrast, if anything.
Yeah. And someone, I don't remember who, Colin might remember, someone famously said years ago, I don't care what you say about me, just spell my name right. And that's nothing. That is about as true as it gets. Like, those guys don't care, because hate, great, agree, disagree. It's the discourse, it's the clicks, it's the watches. They don't care. Spell their name right and they're happy. Before we get you out of here, though, unless Colin has one of these super deep questions for you, I've got a question for you. Like I just watching your show, which is fantastic, and we'll make sure that we put some links in the show for everybody. If there's anybody left on the planet that doesn't know who you are or where you are, we'll make sure they can find you down in our comments when we post it. But do you have a favorite team, or are you hiding that in your back pocket somewhere? Because I can't discern who your teams are.
Yeah, Steve doesn't. He's kind of nomadic now. He was a Tom Brady fan, so for years he was a Patriots fan, basically by default. And this is a common. Neil Hornsby, who set up PFF, he was a Dan Marino fan. So sort of in the 80s, he was like a Dolphins fan. And then when Marino retired, he realized he was really a Marino fan. He wasn't a Dolphins fan at all. Steve was kind of like that with the Patriots. He realized
was he a Bucs
that actually
fan then after? Was he did he become a Bucs?
No, but he just realized he was a Brady fan, right? It wasn't a Patriots thing. It wasn't a Bucs thing. He just liked Tom Brady. I am a Vikings fan because for a year when I was a kid, we lived in Minnesota. So I kind of picked it up there and I've been stuck with them ever since. So I unfortunately am trapped in the world of actual fandom and being stuck with the Vikings come what may.
Yeah, good. Good on you.
Sam, we've seen the Shouty Shows come to the Premier League. Is it coming for rugby next?
I mean, I think it's coming for everything. Like, unfortunately, it is the content that does the best, and everybody knows that. Everyone recognizes that. And if you're chasing anything other than, this amorphous concept of sort of integrity and down the line analysis, if you're chasing engagement, if you're chasing the numbers, viewership, money, whatever it is, you are going to push down the Shouty Show direction, right? You're like the guy, the pundit, if you're choosing between two of them, right? The straight-laced guy who's just going to tell you the way it is, and he's the most accurate guy you can think of, and a guy who's going to bloviate and just say whatever's on his mind, and most of it's ridiculous. That guy's going to, more people are going to watch that guy, so he'll get employed. And yeah, I mean, it's the sad reality, but that's the way everything's going to go.
Well, see, here's the good news is we're ahead of the game, you included, because we are the anti, and it's a niche. We have a niche. And so there are people who want this sort of content. And, thank the gods that we have your show. Sam, you and Sam do a great job. And can't thank you enough for taking the time to come on with us and let us get in your head a little bit. I appreciate you coming on. I'm going to start yelling just a little bit more. I just think maybe I could yell at Colin a little bit more than I do. But I'm just going to try it on for size. You never know. He's Sam Monson NFL on social media. And check him out, co-host of Check the Mic with Steve. Now, is it Palazzolo?
Palazzolo,
because I knew it screwed one thing up. And thanks again for coming on, Sam. We really appreciate you. And we kept you a little longer, so I'll send you a check as soon as I can get that out to you. Promise.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Nice. Colin, get us out of here, Colin.
Sam, appreciate your time. What I would say is for listeners, for viewers, the next time you hear somebody talking about a quarterback's legacy in August, maybe it's time to turn off the channel. This has been Spin Zone. Mike and I'll be back next week with a new topic that we're going to unpick.
You're not going to want to